Majora's Mask has some of the most untalked about temples in all of Zelda. No, seriously, look up any temple from this game besides maybe Stone Tower, and there's not nearly as much content on them as there should be because there's some super creative ideas in each of them. While we've looked at Woodfall and Stone Tower previously, this time we're going to take a hike on over to Snowhead Temple. If you've seen these videos of mine before, then the format is the same, but for those who are unaware of the greatness these analysis videos have, let me break it down for you. Basically, I'll talk about the lead up to the temple along with each and every room inside of the temple. I'll also give my opinions on every single detail that I find interesting to talk about, and I'll even talk about the outcome of finishing the temple. But I got a bone to pick with the 98% of my viewers who aren't subscribed. Pretty please subscribe, it would mean the absolute world to me, and it takes 2 seconds to do, so why not help me out? I'll leave links to the other analysis videos in the description if y'all are interested, and without any further ado, let's get right into the analysis of Snowhead Temple. After getting the hero's bow from Woodfall Temple, we can now make our way on over to Mountain Village. Mountain Village is found north of Clocktown, and the reason we need the bow is to clear the obstacles blocking our way. This opens up the path to the Mountain Village, and honestly, the pathway is pretty uneventful. The only thing I note is some blue Tektites roaming around and giant snowballs that you can blow up with bombs. That part doesn't really matter because after a little bit of walking, we finally arrive in Mountain Village. Some of my favorite locations in games are in snowy areas purely because I love the aesthetic. In this first area, there's actually quite a few things in sight. First, there's a freezing Goron with a goofy looking frog on his head. If you go to the Goron village and light up all of these torches, the chandelier in the middle of the room starts to spin. Using the Goron mask, oh yeah, spoiler alert, in this section of the game we get to use the Goron mask, my bad. We can roll through some of the Gorons on the chandelier and one of them drops some meat. You can pick it up and take it all the way back to the freezing Goron in order to get the Don Garrow's mask. This mask is used for the side quest in which you reunite the Frog Choir to get a piece of heart. Also in the first section of Mountain Village, there's a house which doesn't have much in it for now, so we'll come back to it later. Well, as we run onward, eventually we get to some white wolf foes that we can either fight or run past. Along the pathway, there's also the most lovable weird Zelda character, Tingle. Past him is another area that this time looks a lot more civilized. It's Goron Village, but we can't quite do anything there yet, so instead let's take a look around the area. Towards the back, there's the owl from the southern swamp, and he proposes a little task for us. He wants Link to trust him and jump on these feathers to cross over to a little platform. On the platform, there's a little cave with a chest that gives us the Lens of Truth. Once you exit the cave, you can use the Lens of Truth and what? There were platforms here the whole time? That's crazy! Also, now that Link has the Lens of Truth, we can also see the ghost of a Goron just chilling here. He doesn't tell us much besides how shocked he is that someone can finally see him and asks us to follow him. I'm not one for following ghosts, but I guess this time I can make an exception. He takes us all the way back to the very first area of the Mountain Village, and then he starts to ascend to the top of this little mountain. Luckily, with the use of the Lens of Truth, Link can spot a ladder that can be used to climb all the way to the top. On the cliffside are a couple of Gorons, with one being encased in ice, while the other one tells you about how he just finished making Dharmmani the Goron hero's grave. Once we go inside the grave, there's Dharmmani sitting at the foot of his own tombstone. I know that it's been said 1,000 times, but man, this game is just so dark and depressing. Dharmmani tells the story of how he tried to stop whatever was causing this harsh winter from Snowhead, and he ended up perishing in battle. All he wants Link to do is heal his soul, and lucky for him, there's a song we know that can help him out. Once we play the Song of Healing, a really sad cutscene plays with Dharmmani being surrounded by Gorons celebrating his life. Once the cutscene ends, there's a new mask on the ground, and when Link picks it up, we officially obtain the Goron mask. With this newfound ability, we can read what's inscribed on the grave of Dharmmani because apparently when you put on the Goron mask, you gain the ability to read their language. On it, it gives us the rundown of how to use the Goron mask, but something we need to do first is move the gravestone backwards in order to make this spring flow. This needs to be done so that we can get some hot spring water, which will help us out later. Our next location that we have to go to is the Goron Shrine, and while on the way there's an ice spike that can be melted using the hot spring water. Inside of this hole is another spring, which is going to come in handy. Once we get near the door, we can use the ground pound ability with our new mask in order to open the door to Goron Shrine. Unfortunately for our ears, we have to listen to the constant whining of the Goron Elder's son because according to him, he wants his daddy, but he's nowhere to be found. The only place where you could even be is the little middle area with a bunch of large snowballs, so let's go check that out. After breaking a few of those, eventually we'll find the Goron Elder encapsulated in ice. If you pour the hot spring water onto it, the ice melts and you can talk to him. He doesn't recognize us at first and immediately wants to go to his son, but after a little bit of walking, he finally takes a good look at Link and sees the Goron hero, Dharmmani. We tell him all about how his son misses him and that he needs to get to him quickly. Unfortunately, after a bit, he realizes that he's not going to be able to walk all the way to his son and instead entrusts us with playing a little song for the boy. He pulls out a little drum and attempts to play the song, however, in a funny little bit, he can't seem to remember, so for now, we just learned the lullaby intro. Now with that song learned, we can head on back to that stupid annoying baby and play the lullaby intro for him. After we head on back to Goron Village and play the lullaby intro for him, the little tyke gets up and sings the rest of the lullaby and teaches us the Goron lullaby. With that song finally obtained, we can now start the pathway to Snowhead. First, you have to go back to the first part of Mountain Village and take the pathway next to the owl statue. Let me tell you, the way up to Snowhead is so annoying. You have to use the Goron Mask's rolling ability in order to jump across gaps using ramps scattered about. While using the Goron Mask is very fun, sometimes it can be a pain in the ass to control, so I may or may not have fallen off the path a few times. Also, there's a bunch of rolling snowballs that can be destroyed while rolling, but hitting them can also screw up your pathway. Once we get past that aid section, we finally arrived at Snowhead. Immediately, some sort of blizzard hits Link and we're not able to progress through to the temple, but luckily there's a solution. If we play the Goron's Lullaby, the huge Goron that's blowing the blizzard towards us takes a nap and falls to his doom. Well, now that there's nothing blocking our path, we can finally make our way up to Snowhead. The start of the path up there is very similar to the previous area, with there being giant rolling snowballs and a hill that needs the use of the Goron Mask. There's also the annoying pole that has killed me far more times than I'm willing to admit. After that, we get to roll up on a huge spiral, which is actually pretty fun but still hard to control. At the top of that spiral is the entrance to Snowhead Temple. The first room of Snowhead is just amazing game design to me. It starts out in a very small room with a bunch of ice around and some white bows that hide away at first and attack after a little bit. After clearing out some of the ice, there's a big block to move out of the way, which opens up access to a new room. Inside is a white wolfos, which isn't necessary to kill, but I decided to take him out anyway with my epic butt attack. In this room there's a few doors, but the one to the right is the only one that can be accessed for now. This next room took me way too long to figure out when I was younger. Not because it's hard, no, I struggled so much because I just can't control the Goron Mask at all apparently. In this room are a bunch of freezards, a ramp that can be used to get to the other side of the room, and as is tradition, a stray fairy. This ramp kicked my ass as a kid, and I don't even know why, it's not that hard. I guess I was just stupid. Well, now that we've talked about the temple a bit, it's time for everyone's favorite segment, music analysis with Jikbean. Just like Woodfall Temple, the music in Snowhead is very ominous sounding with not many instruments being played. The only things that are heard throughout the song is some sort of wind sound reminiscent of cold air, a crash sound which represents icicles crashing from high areas which is shown later in the temple, and finally a piano that plays really short and staccato notes. I actually really like this theme and think it's better than the previous Woodfall Temple theme. It has some really cool theming which can't be said for the design of the temple, and it sounds so mysterious. Okay, back to the room that we left off in, and there's 2 areas to go, but let's climb up these stairs first. There's actually not much to do after reaching the top of the stairs, as for now we can only obtain a stray fairy and get the dungeon map from a chest. The only other way we can go is through the door, and we have finally entered the central room of Snowhead. This is such an open area with a bunch of doors and ramps scattered about. There's some stairs that we can take to get to the very bottom of the temple, which weirdly has a bunch of lava, but the only thing of note here right now is a button that grants us a stray fairy. If we climb back up the stairs, there's some doors that take us into various rooms. One of the doors leads us into a room that doesn't have much for us to do right now, but there's some blocks that can be moved into place to get a stray fairy later down the line. Behind the blocks is also a chest that gives us a small key. Now that we have a small key, we can head on back to the first room of the temple to unlock that locked door. Something that I don't like too much is all the backtracking that you need to do in order to 100% this temple. I know that Stone Tower did this too, watch the video if you haven't, linked below, but I found it way more fun to do there. This next room has some things encased in ice that can be dealt with later and 3 white wolfos to fight. This room also has one of the most fun stray fairies to collect by throwing a bomb at the right time at this box. Oh yeah, there's also a chest that has the compass in it. I almost forgot to mention that. After bombing away the wall, we can head on over to the next room, which has Link use the bow to shoot down a bunch of icicle spikes. There's also a stray fairy here that can only be found using the Lens of Truth. There's quite a few fairies in this temple that have us use the Lens of Truth, and while some are pretty stupid to get, I still like using them for the most part. After we do some hardcore parkour across platforms, we eventually reach a chest that contains a small key. With another key obtained, we can move on to the next room of the temple, and I like this one quite a bit. This room contains a stray fairy in the ceiling that can only be seen with the Lens of Truth, and we might be pushing the Lens of Truth usage so far. In order to get to the other side of the room, we have to use the Goron Mask to ground pound these switches a few times. Not the most creative and intricate room, but hey, it could be worse, and we'll get to worse later. Through the door is a ramp that we can jump with the Goron Mask. On the other side is a pathway blocked by ice, but luckily we can roll across the side to another door. In this door, unfortunately, is one of 2 mini-bosses in this temple, a Wizrobe. I don't find these guys that fun to fight because you can just sit in one area and shoot them with a bow. After that snooze fest is over, a chest spawns in the middle of the room that contains the fire arrows. With the fire arrows now obtained, so many new areas and fairies have been opened. First things first, let's head back to the first room with a ramp that gave Kid Jikbean trouble. We can now kill all the little ice guys in here, and after that a chest spawns that contains, you guessed it, a small key. We can also now burn down all the ice-cased doors on the first floor. Through one of these doors is a room where we have to do even more epic jumps across ice while lighting some torches along the way. There's also more ice guys to defeat, and after doing both of those things, you get a stray fairy and open up a door with a switch. When the switch is ground pounded, a giant pillar erects in the middle of the temple, and about halfway through Snowhead, we finally start to feel like a Zelda temple here. We can also head back on over to the room that had stairs and shoot the frozen eye to trigger a rising platform. Okay, now we're getting into ridiculous territory with the use of the Lens of Truth. There's a bunch of invisible platforms to jump across that lead us to a chest with a stray fairy. This temple is getting so out of hand with the Lens of Truth, but don't worry, the worst is yet to come. We can do even more backtracking and go back to the room with 3 icicles in it. Now that we have the fire arrows, we can melt all of them to get a few things. First, we can melt the ice covering a button which spawns a chest in the room. Next, we can reveal a block that can be moved to get the chest with the stray fairy inside. There's also another platform in this area that can be reached with the block. On that platform is a door which leads to the room from earlier that had nothing but a small key in it. Now since we have access to the higher floor, we can jump across and oh my god! Yeah, there's some scary pots guarding the chest, but luckily they're easy to deal with and we can get our stray fairy in peace. Now we can finally get back to the actual temple by going to the second floor where we get to use the admittedly pretty cool gimmick of punching away at the giant pillar to shorten it. Now with the pillar shortened, we can take these stairs to climb to the next floor and continue punching away. Now with all the punching done, there's a platform that takes us even higher, but first there's a locked door that we can go through. This is by far the most forgettable room in this temple as it's just a big snowy area with some snow enemies around. There's also another hidden wall that contains a stray fairy and man, I'm getting tired of those. Luckily for me though, there's some ice blocking a stairway that Link can burn to get to one of the better rooms in the temple. There's 2 Lizalfos in here, and like I said in the Woodfall Temple analysis video, link in the description if you haven't seen it, I find them pretty fun to fight. Not only are they fun to fight, but after defeating them, each one of them drops a stray fairy. Past this room, we can jump on down to the platform where there's a bunch of giant snowballs to destroy. Past those is another staircase which leads to the top floor that has Deku Flower access. We can use the Deku Flower to get to the floor below us that has a door containing the second mini-boss of the temple. Unfortunately, it's not some crazy cool boss, it's just another Wizrobe, but get this, there's even more places for him to teleport to. Just like the last fight, you can simply beat him by standing in one spot, and after you do, a door opens and in that next room is the boss key. Well, now it's time to fight the boss, but wait, it appears that I'm missing a stray fairy. Oh yeah, that's my bad. I forgot to use the Lens of Truth and look at this exact spot on the wall and then jump from a very high spot and then land perfectly and then open the chest. Wow, how could I even forget that one? Anyway, once we get that stupid last stray fairy, we can now enter the boss room. As we enter the boss room, the camera pans over to some sort of monster encased in ice. Obviously, the only thing to do is burn the ice and out pops the masked mechanical monster, Got. This is by far the best boss fight in Majora's Mask and is even considered for best boss fight in all of Zelda. What you gotta do is use the Goron mask to become a spiky ball and hit Got with it. As the boss fight progresses, he starts doing more attacks like shooting lightning out of his skull or sending stalagmites down towards Link. It's so fun ramming into the side of Got, and you can even knock him down and just wail on him. Sadly though, all good things must come to an end, and after a very fun boss fight, we pick up a heart container and also Got's remains. Just like in Woodfall, after getting Got's remains, we're teleported into Jotunheim and get a talking to from a giant. Nothing too much happens here this time before we're teleported back to the mountain village. There's actually quite a bit to do post Snowhead Temple, and the first noticeable thing is that it's springtime everywhere. Before anything, we should head on over to the first building in Mountain Village, which is actually a blacksmith. They offer to forge our sword into the Razor Sword, but we'll get it at sunrise on the next day. While that's getting repaired, let's head on over to the Goron Shrine to see what's up with the Gorons. They're all gathered in the center and praise Dharmmani up before the Elder tells Link that we should check out the Goron races. We head over to where the race would normally be, but there's a rock blocking the way, so it's our job to blow it up. Around the Goron Shrine, there's a little cave with a big Goron in it. If you talk to him, he'll give you a powder keg to take all the way to the racetrack to clear the path. After the pathway is clear, we can go in and do the Goron race. The Goron race is actually pretty difficult, and yeah, that once again might be contributed to the fact that I suck with Goron controls, but this time I don't think that's the case. After a few tries, we beat the Goron race, and the little tyke that made us do that in the first place gives us a bottle of gold dust. By the time the race is over, our sword is completed and we obtain the Razor Sword, which unfortunately breaks after 100 hits, but if we use the gold dust we just got, we can upgrade the sword again. We still have to wait another day though, but it's so worth it because after that wait, we get the second strongest sword in the game, the Gilded Sword. This sword looks so cool, and while the Great Fairy Sword is technically better, you get the Gilded Sword much earlier in the game, therefore I think the Gilded Sword is far better. Oh yeah, I almost completely forgot to mention the Great Fairy reward. Underneath Snowhead Temple, there's a little cave where the fairy resides. After we return all of the stray fairies, she doubles our magic bar, and this is by far the best fairy upgrade in the game. Well, now it's time to place Snowhead Temple on the old temple tier list. Honestly, after this latest playthrough, my opinion on Snowhead has actually grown much worse than I thought. I found more problems with the temple, and the Lens of Truth usage in this temple started to piss me off a lot. While it's not the worst temple I've ever seen in Zelda, I do think it's far worse than the other 2 temples on the tier list, so I'm going to place Snowhead Temple in C tier. Well, there you have it, there's Snowhead Temple analyzed. As you could probably guess, I'll be covering Great Bay Temple in the next episode of this series. By the way, how do you guys like the new name for the series? It's a playoff of Odyssey Central's level by level series, and I think it's pretty good. If you think it's a cool idea, then I think you should subscribe for more cool videos. They mean the world to me, and we're decently close to 100 subscribers, and I think it would be pretty cool to hit that soon. I'll even do a 100 subscriber special to celebrate the occasion. I want to thank you guys for the continued support. I appreciate every single one of you, and I love you all. With all that being said, be good people, and have a phenomenal rest of your day.